So here we are, Mr. Omo. I wasn't quite sure how to start this one because I have the way I start every single podcast is always the same. So I might just hand it to you.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I was sitting here thinking how to start it myself, and I usually come on here and you're driving the show, and so to be in the driver's seat, I'm like, I'm not very well versed at that. I'm like, where's this first question? And I kind of had this feeling. It's like, it's like when your mate has this amazing sports car and he gives you the keys to drive around the block once. It's like, oh, cool, I've got the keys to this Guy Lawrence podcast here to drive this around for a little bit. So I'm pretty excited.
I'm grateful you compared me to a sports car, the podcast, a really nice sports car. I'm not sure which one it would be, but...
possibly a Tesla or maybe a Ferrari or something. Yeah, somewhere in there. Combination of the two, perhaps. So, welcome to your podcast, Mr. Guy Lawrence.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to first acknowledge you because it's been, I've had the pleasure of working with you intimately through the retreats and the workshops over the past 2 years. And I feel like you've not only taken my work to the next level, but you've allowed me to share the work and inspired me to grow within myself even more over these last 2 years. And so, I think I'd like to hopefully share with the community here why that is and who this beautiful man that you are is a bit deeper than what might have been shown as you interview everyone else, because there's such a depth of heart and care and passion within you that just translates through all the work, and just being around you is just such a gift, and it inspires me to do even more. So hopefully we can get people here to be a bit more inspired, knowing more deeply who you are. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. And, just on that, the old self years ago would actually struggle to receive any form of compliments. And the newer version of myself that I work through always sits here and accepts the compliment, and which I think is a big thing, actually, in owning ourselves as well, when we talk about this work.
Absolutely.
But, thank you.
Yeah. No, it's a pleasure. So I think I would just like to start out with a question that I have been handed a couple times being a guest on your podcast, which is if you happen to be on a plane, well, maybe not so much a plane these days, or in a lift with somebody, and they ask you what you do, and what would you tell them that you do for a living?
Yeah, I had this conversation only this morning with a random stranger. I was with Ava at the coffee shop, and he was asking how old Ava was and that, and he was quizzing me. And normally when a guy starts asking me a question around Ava, it means they've got children or they're expecting, and he was expecting. And he was like, do you go to work? And I was like, well, yeah, kind of. I work for myself. And that opened that dialogue straight away, because he was like, wow, and so you get to spend time with your daughter every day? And I went, yeah, it's pretty cool, hey. And he lit up, and then he said, well, how do you get to spend so much time and work? And I said, I run retreats. That was the first thing I said. I found myself saying at the moment, because as you know, it can get quite complicated from there and then upon. And then he said, well, what do you do at those retreats? And the two things I find myself coming out with is I help people remember who they truly are, is one thing I say. But also I say I help people heal and overcome their own traumas and difficulties in life to become more of who they are. And instantly when I said that, he got it as well. And I said, that's pretty much all of us, because I'm always worried when I say that we actually position someone into some kind of, peg them into some category. Or there's something broken, you got trauma, well, when I think actually the work we do should be just a practice, just like exercising, just like eating good nutrition. There's an element of coming back to ourselves, finding ourselves, but then maintaining it, and then that's when the exploration and the juice of the real stuff can come out. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. You find that that's mostly received by people then when you present it in that way?
Definitely up here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, up there. Byron.
Yeah, in all honesty, because as you know, when you work with so many people, you tend to get a beat on where they are, and that's not being judgmental, but that's just being how stressed the person is, how caught up in the daily lives they are, or how aware. And, within a minute or two of getting to know someone or talking to someone or feeling them, you kind of gauge of how far down the rabbit hole you go. Because sometimes I'll open up with and just go right down the rabbit hole and say, oh yeah, I had this huge awakening 7 years ago, and it was just mind blowing. I had this, greater than life and body experience, and I wanted to piece it all together. And some people are like, wow, but then on the other hand, they say, oh, I just teach people and help people and show them a better way. It really, really depends. But I love going down deep if I can.
Yeah, no, I've witnessed you going down deep, and by the conversations we typically have, it drops right down the rabbit hole really fast, and which is exciting. But I'd really like to know, and if you could share with everyone, like, why, what has driven you? Because it's not everybody. Obviously, even this guy that you just talked to, he's like, oh wow, you even get to work on your own, have your own business, and then you're doing something where you're helping other people, and it's like helping them discover who they are. It's like, what spark, what was ignited in you to take that journey? Because it's not the most paved path, to go down that road.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hey, I do wonder myself sometimes. Think, shit, shouldn't I just got a job?
I know, right?
Because I do feel like we're ahead of the curve to some respects, and then that comes with pros and cons to it. But when it comes to drive, I think, and just for everyone listening as well, I don't really know what questions Matt's going to be firing at me today, so I'm just rolling with it. It's not pre-framed or pre-scripted or anything. It's just a chat. But I at 46 years old now, one of the things I often think about is context, and context to having highs and lows and different aspects of your life. It's like how could you really understand what love is or true gratitude is if you haven't had a loss or a pain or something of the equal opposite to give you that context in life, to then start to really value it and then find the balance within as we live life moving forward. And the drive, I guess, to me has been innate in me from a young age at some aspect. But for the first half of my life, I couldn't put any words to it. I wasn't mentored. I wasn't shown a way. I wasn't told that actually this is your soul. This is your heart wanted to come through and guide you forward. I just became very good at avoiding things in the first half of my life that didn't seem right. When all my mates were off getting married, getting a mortgage, into a job, and I could tell they weren't that satisfied back in Wales. There was all these key conditions, and that was pretty much everyone I surrounded myself in to a degree. I had a few that would slip off to uni. I never even went to university, things like that. But within me, there was always a strong will, even back then, to go, I'm not accepting that. I'm not accepting that. I can't do that. And even though society and pressure was trying to push me and fit me in this way, it just got to the point where that will was strong enough to leave and get out. But then it actually created more pain, more heartache, more sadness in me, because I didn't know what to refill it with, those elements in my life, and it took me a long time. So I think having lived that part of myself for such a long time, to at least to my mid-30s, that drive and being able to look back upon that, and once I started to actually find myself on path, on course, and actually almost get the wheel or the handlebars of this thing and start to learn how to ride this properly and take it in a direction, I'm forever, ever grateful of actually that pain that I had. And it was a painful time for me, even though I never expressed it, I always held it in. I think not a lot of people would see that about me. I was always just like, somebody that was quiet or the waters ran deep kind of thing, but I just couldn't put it in. So once I started to get traction in the other direction, especially when I became a fitness trainer, then I started working with people that had cancer, and a few people weren't then turning up after working with them for 6 or 9 months, because they'd passed away. I really started to see the true value of my life. and how much my own stories, beliefs, and had been holding me back. So once I started to then buy into the fact that maybe I could make a difference and maybe I could do something with my life, I then just ran with it. And all the tools that we talk about and teach were the things that I was exploring. And they were a massive, massive help to me to allow me to overcome those aspects of myself, to really find what I do now. So these days I take the pressure off myself to a degree, but I actually really focus and enjoy certain aspects of my life daily, and I'm very wary of when I'm in the past or in the future and chasing the something to enjoying these moments as well, because right now I'm in such a great place in myself and with Ava and Linda, my wife and daughter and things. I can really see the gift, and I'm so glad I became a dad now, not 10 years ago. And I know it's different for every single person, but for me personally, I just wasn't ready that time, and I can actually soak it up. So it causes me to pause, but there is always that drive. I wake up every morning and I'm obsessed. Like, you know, it's there. But like you, when we see the impact it has on other people, because of what I've been through, one thing I think I'm one of my sort of super skills is like I'm empathetic. You know, I'm an empath. I can feel people, but I can see myself in other people and see their pains and their problems or troubles and really feel that, because I can so relate to myself in that time. And I think, wow, I can help that person. If they're ready to help themselves, I can genuinely know, help and make a difference in some way, even if it's small. And there's no greater reward, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but like, you know, I've had financial wins here and there. I've had different elements that I thought were going to make me happy, and they weren't actually that fulfilling. But when you come away and in this expansive state and an open heart and seeing somebody's else life change, just by showing them the way, showing that they have the capability within themselves, nothing comes close to that. So I think that drives me, continues to drive me, and I think, well, life would be kind of dull if we just kind of, you know, sat around, watched TV all day and didn't do much else.
Yeah. Well, perhaps.
Perhaps. Maybe not.
Depends on what you're watching. Eh?
Yeah, true. True.
So as you're talking there, like, I totally resonate with a lot of that journey and like, you know, trying to just find that thing that filled me up through my life, and watching my friends go down the conditioned path of the, you know, what we're supposed to do and what we strive for. And so, you know, I would imagine that there's people that would listen to this or will listen to this that may have not had that ability to navigate away from the things that didn't fill them up, and actually find themselves in places that they don't feel fulfilled or on purpose in their lives, or this type of thing. And so for those types of people, and even the ones like, just, I think it's quite inspiring to see how you've navigated your life, and you've created this whole platform through your podcast, through the retreats, through everything that you do, to then impact other people, and it's creating this ripple effect. Is there like a one kind of tip or like key factor that allows you to continue to stay on track with yourself and stay authentic and find that purpose and stay in alignment with what fulfills you, that other people can adhere to?
Oh. A tip. It wasn't until I got to know myself that I could wholeheartedly throw my heart into something, right? I remember reading this book by is it Norman Peale? Was he like the
Norman Vincent Peale or something, was it?
Yes, Norman Vincent Peale.
Yeah.
And he apparently wrote best-selling book, and I'm buggered if I can remember the name of it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like a positive thinking thing or something, wasn't it? Or
Exactly.
Something
Exactly.
back in the 80s or something, wasn't it? Or
Yeah.
maybe
And apparently he kept doing seminars into his 90s until he literally took his last breath, because he was so passionate about this work,
Right.
and helping people. And there was he was talking about there was a story in there, I think, and I've read this book like 15 years ago, but I think it was a father and daughter. God, I haven't even thought about this for a while. And they were doing the what's the one when you're on the parallel bars, and you swing from one to the other in gymnastics.
Oh,
And
yeah, the
they
uneven
swing
bars.
and then they grab another bar.
Or you talk about
The what
trapeze,
bars?
mate. You're talking about trapeze.
No.
You're talking about uneven bars in gymnastics.
The uneven bars in gymnastics.
Okay.
The bars, I can't remember. Anyway,
Yeah.
and this girl was a daughter, where he was training his daughter, and she was a bit fearful, and she ended up having to, do 2 spins and let go. And the moral of the story is like, you always have to lead with your heart first, and the rest follows. And the moment I read that, it stuck with me till now, like 15 years later. I still think about that from that point. But to lead with the heart first, we really have to get to know ourselves. We have to get to know the conditioned mind, understand that the thoughts, the thinking are not necessarily ourselves, and we can witness beyond those. Get to know the emotions, get to know the body, get to know the feelings. And as you know, and what we do, that does take time. We have to start spending the time to eliminate the distractions. And one of the greatest gifts that came out for me in those darker times for myself was that I did have a lot of time. And so I used to have the art of contemplation actually happening on a daily basis, sort of forced upon me, because I didn't have much money. I was trying to figure out where to go. So I'd just go for like long walks along the beach, because I was living in South Coogee. And I was giving myself space, and I was reading books. I was starting to listen to certain CDs with the CD books with the go back then, before Audible come on.
Yeah.
And I just started listening to that, and that's why I got so passionate about podcasts, because then when podcasts were around, I was listening to podcasts, and podcasts were having such an influence on me, and being that. So if there was one tip I would actually give someone, is to just give yourself fucking space. Just actually take some time out and listen to what wants to present itself. Don't fill it with your phone. Don't fill it with music. Don't fill it with books necessarily, but just have that time, have that contemplation. And I'm actually getting that more back because of Ava, because I take her for so many walks. I choose, sometimes I listen to an Audible or a podcast I'm about to interview, and then sometimes I just walk and I just stare, and I allow my vision to open up onto, go nice and wide, which has been proven to get you into an alpha brainwave state as well. And I just start to see what ideas start to flow and things come in, and that's when you have those moments in the shower, right?
I was just thinking that as you were talking. I'm like, yeah, it's that space where you're in the shower and you have the insights, where you're not thinking about the thing, and then it comes, the answer hits you, and it's like.
But you got to have the courage to then act upon those insights. They're all well and good. And that's what I started doing, because I had nothing to lose back when I started, because I grew a company in 180 Nutrition with me and my old business partner. That was when that intuitive insight things started to happen in my life. And because I had nothing to lose and I was coming from a place of pain, I kind of just didn't even think about failing. Like it didn't even occur to me. I mean, obviously I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't have children. My responsibility factor was lower. But I was still in my 30s. I had other friends that were pulling up in their Mercedes-Benz at the surf club because they were very established in life. And I was still comparing myself to my neighbors who were dear friends, but they had the swimming pool, the barbecue, and the ocean views, while I was like living in almost like a squat with 3 other lads. You know what I mean? And we all get caught up in that. But I think I'd been able to keep myself out of the system, if you like, because I never got really pulled into it in the first place. I then learned it was a gift. And yes, I didn't have much, but I certainly hadn't stacked up a lot of things that were not meaningless to me anyway. I'm not saying that's how we all live, but we certainly tend to do that, right? Fill it with things and objects and people and stuff to keep us avoiding from the very things that we probably need to address, to move through, to allow us to really live from the heart. So that's a kind of a left-right answer.
I thought that was quite a through line there. It's like you went from given the space to listen to the heart, to know yourself, so that you can then allow for this inspiration to come forward and then move towards it. And it's like there's so many nuggets in that you just spoke to. And I think what fascinates me about you is that, you know, on my journey, I kind of, as things would come up, I'm like, oh, I need to go and get this degree here, or go do this diploma here, or you know, learn this technique or this or that. And as you blow me away, mate, because in the workshops, I'm doing my sound sessions and the retreats and whatnot, and it's like these, you know, it's something that I developed over 10 years, and I bring in like 15 different modalities, and it's like I've trained with different teachers and so forth. And then you step in and you support me in it, and you're tuned in, and it's like you're just an extension of me, and you get it. And I'm like, what? This dude just circumnavigated the last 15 years of my training, and he's doing it better than me now. And I'm like, so what fascinates me about you is it's almost like this getting to the heart. You've tapped into this intuition within yourself. Does that resonate with you? Is that kind of what you feel like when you talk about coming from the heart? Because you've mentioned that a few times, like come from the heart and be in the heart. And I think for a lot of people, that's kind of a foreign construct, because it's either the heart's a mechanical pump, or you know, what do you mean? How do you come from your heart when it's my mind that actually has to make the choices, take the actions, you know? So is that intuition? Is that inspiration? Like, can you like expand on how you do that? Because you're from witnessing you're tuned into something greater than what your mind is actually tapping into. And that to me is a potential that I think we all have. And I'd love to hear more insight on how you've developed that and opened into that.
Wow. Thank you for that, first of all. And that means a lot coming from you. There's a knowing that is beyond words that comes in. That's the best way I could frame it. Sometimes you just know.
Yeah.
You just know. And it's that knowing for me is where that knowing comes from the heart. Like it, as far as I'm concerned, it's a brain. It's a brain that has no language. It's a brain that has no logical ego meaning. It's a brain that's probably, if we were to dissect it from the actual brain, it's like all that right side, creative, intuitive self. And that knowing can be developed and evolved, because all we are doing is starting to listen to what's already there. We just improve in the practice of that listening to. And that still comes all the way back to creating that contemplation, that space in your daily life to have that muscle developed from that place within the heart. You know, I mean, you can look at the heart math, you can look at Greg Braden. They talk about that. They talk about the sensory neurites of the heart. There's 40,000 of them. They're like brain-like cells. There's a connection, and the heart actually sends 80% of the signal to the brain, with the brain only sending 20% to the heart. So if we deepen that connection, head to heart, heart to head, then actually we can be running from the signal from the heart, sending it, and eventually reaching the brain, but you already know. So there's information beyond space and time that we are connecting into. It's just like, how do we connect to that? And interestingly, the way I look at this now, if the heart is part of the nervous system, and the nervous system regulates the body, the homeostasis, it keeps us alive, whether we're in a stress response, whether we're in a rest or repair response, you know, all these things govern to how good that signal is to that intuitive self, to the knowing self. And I start to know when you're in or out. But it's interesting, even before coming on to the show now, you know, when we sit, when we have a moment, you can really connect and tune into that. And then there's a knowing that comes from that whatever is spoken today is going to be exactly the way it's meant to be, and it's going to come out and it's going to have a ripple effect and move on. And I think to connect to that, we got to remove the ego. We got to remove expectation. So often we want things to go a certain way. And from the wanting it to go a certain way is coming normally from something that probably hasn't been resolved or healed within us. So we're heaping expectation that continually perpetuates a way of being that we're not even consciously aware of in the first place. So I think as we start to, if you like, shine the light upon the areas in our life that we maybe not have looked at, even were aware that were there, wanted to look at, once we start to reveal them and release them, feel them, and let them go, I think that connection continues to deepen. And there have been moments along the way in my journey of this work that have accelerated that tremendously as well. And that's from doing different things. Like, when I can think of the key, I know intuitively, I can tell you what the key moments were, right?
Yeah.
And I've never said this before, but let's break it down, right?
Yeah.
So, as that knowing was getting stronger, it drove me to look at meditation. So I started doing meditation. I remember doing Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey 21-day challenge.
Nice one.
Like 11 years ago.
Go right to the top of the chain there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
right?
Oprah. Like, how can you get bigger than that?
Exactly. And my mate put me onto it, and I started doing that, and it got me frustrated. But that was what, developing. Then I got curious, and I ended up doing a plant-based shamanic journey, right?
Yeah.
Which, again, really revealed a lot of the dark spots. And again, it's just a tool. It's certainly, you either get called to do it or you don't. At the time, I was called to do it, and I did that. So from there, then I did your 6-week work, and remember it, in the 5th week, I will never forget it, removing the grief of my dad that had held in me, that I hadn't mourned, which would have been 18 months prior, even a year prior, when my dad passed.
Yep.
Right. So all of a sudden, in these moments, I'm now removed. I'm shining the light. I'm starting to look at what it is and being able to surrender into, to let the body heal itself that I hadn't, because I was always in the more thinking mind's external, trying to resolve things and run away and never look into the inner work. And allow the body to heal. So that started to happen. Then I started to take my meditations further. And then I started to meditate through the energy centers. So I would sit there every day religiously, 5-6 days a week. I'd dedicate an hour every single morning without fail for months and months and months. And I would start working on my emotional centers. Things started really moving. Then I'd just doing more work with you. Then, I'd come in for one-on-one sessions and stuff.
Oh, right.
Then I learned how to move energy with the breath. So then I was able to move a huge amount of energy in a short space of time. Using different practices, using the spine, which, we speak about at the retreats as well and that, but create an amplitude of energy that was charged that could then clear the centers even more, which was a pivotal moment. So then I realized I started to look at adaptation and being able to adapt the nervous system, which I believe allows consciousness to allow us to have this experience run through us. So if I can allow more consciousness, if you like, more awareness, become more aware, more conscious within me, and if that's an adaptation of the body, healing the past, evolving the nervous system, then surely I can become more consciously aware and more intuitive from the back end of doing the work, which again starts to remove more ego, which starts to remove more expectation. Yeah.
I was just going to say, because you become more intuitive because you have a greater awareness of the consciousness that's wanting to come through. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So you've opened,
yes.
The adaptation has opened up more flow of...
Yes. That's how my simple Welsh interpretation looks. I'm sure if you picked up some traditional textbooks or went to India, they'd say it in a different way.
Yeah, of course.
What I just said. But I think that's been my gift, because I look at that and go, okay, well, that means that. Let's not overcomplicate it. I used to see that in the fitness industry all the time. People would overcomplicate the shit, the way they trained, the way they ate, the way they exercised, and they'd end up with still the same result to the person that just actually did the work.
Yeah. Well, that's I think another gift of yours is that you come from the Welsh rugby kind of background, and you're very, in your masculine, and it's like, you're not wearing a turban or adhering to any tradition or religion, which gives you access to pretty much anyone, and makes it feel okay, like it's normal. I think you normalize it a bit. So, like, that's an incredible, like, unpacking of, like, this clearing and this opening to this adaptation, then to allow the space for the development of yourself for more conscious to move through you. It's like, it sounds so simple, hey? Like,
it is.
So if it's so simple, why aren't more people doing it?
Well, you're not aware.
Yeah.
We're just unconscious. We're unconsciously aware. We're just going about, like, society, the Western society anyway, is not set up to support this. Like, look at the mass expectation on a family these days. If we buy into what we consider to be normal, and that they were the elements that I always continued to look at, and I just could not let myself go down that route. I didn't want to be that person. I don't know. I lived in Coogee or whatever, but with a beautiful house. And don't get me wrong, I would love to live in a beautiful house, and I still have aspirations to live in a beautiful house. But I want to do it on my terms. I don't want to be in debt up to an eyeballs in a job that makes my heart sink, and I'm constantly having to put 60, 70, 80 hours in a week. And then I'm eating foods that don't nourish my body. I'm caffeinating myself out the eyeballs to get me through to the weekend. I can't wait till Saturday morning comes or whatever. But then, I'm probably pigeonholing a little bit here. But that just I just didn't want to go in that direction. And I refuse, even though there was a lot of temptation along the way and a lot of pressure in some society, just from society itself, or the way I was interpreting it. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But where were we? Where were we going on?
Just kind of going down that path of, why aren't more people doing this type of work,
right.
and opening. I mean, it sounds to me, and from what your experience has been, and I know from my own experience, so it's when we start to lean into that heart that then things start to open, and we live. I mean, ultimately, all of us are wanting to have more purpose, more passion, more connection, more love in our lives, like these types of things, right? And so, but it's just always been such a confusing thing to me as to why more people don't open into this and explore that heart that's wanting to come forward.
Yeah.
And you're just talking about the pace that we live and the conditioned responses that we live in. So,
and we don't get taught it. Like again, in my own life, I was that guy. Until I was about 30, I wasn't even aware of Tony Robbins or somebody like that. You know what I mean? Like, I just wasn't aware that there was a different way of doing things. Right. And I realized how disconnected I was from the very things that we talk about, hence why we call the retreat Reconnected, right?
Yeah.
Disconnected from myself. I did not know myself, which then drove pain, and I felt disconnected from my family because I wasn't connected to myself. How can we truly love somebody else if we don't truly love ourselves? Nature I was around a bit. I think that was one of my good fortunes, is that I did put myself around nature. But quite often now, if you're living in the city, or we're not in nature enough, and I had no idea there was a universal field of energy that connects everything and everyone beyond our 3D 5 senses paradigm, which is what we explore in the podcast as well. And there's a relationship with that too. And by nurturing those things, it really allows you to declutter the very things that are keeping you preoccupied or busy, and you actually start to, well, as you come back to the heart, you come back to actually the essence, I believe, of what really matters in life. And once we get back to that essence, I think it becomes much easier to make decisions once we learn to detach from the things that have kept us away from that for so long. And you know, it's interesting. I heard an analogy there. I was only talking to Steve, the owner of Gaimea Retreat, and he's like, he's like, the Tour de France, and they're on these U-boot. I don't know how much they spend on a push bike.
Yeah.
But they're so light. The weight is one thing. Why they're so expensive is because they want the bikes as light as possible. And you're on this push bike, and you've got these wheels that are made of some kind of material that's lightweight. But if they need to be perfectly aligned, and that's how I now see my head and my heart, like aligned. But the moment that alignment strays in life, you get the wobble on the wheel of the bike, and if the alignment's out too much, what happens to the wheel? Those wheels on those push bikes will collapse like a matchbox, like boom,
yeah, right,
and you're gone. So that's what I think about now, and we are so misaligned, and that's where all those wheels are collapsing in a big way for a lot of people. And if we do start to just, treat this work with the respect that it does, we can work through whatever we need to work through to bring that alignment back in. And I think that's when more purpose will come. That's when more joy will come. That's when more inner peace will come. That's when more self-love will come, more self-respect, more self-empowered. And once we're aligned, but it's not it's not out there.
It's not out
like
there.
You.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, that's, I suppose, one of the things that the podcast, the work that you do is offering to the world, is that opportunity to align the head and the heart in their lives and to move in a more effective way towards whatever it is they want.
Absolutely.
So if they obviously have this strong desire to help people to realize who they are and become more of themselves and open into more of a depth in life. And if you created a whole, business around it, if you, let's say, could go, 20, 30 years into the future, like what's your vision? What do you hope to accomplish with all this that you're putting so much energy and passion into? What would you want it to come out of it? What would the legacy be of this type of work?
Wow. I don't think that far ahead, but I will. Honestly, for me, I'm not sure how it would look.
Yeah.
And how the legacy looks. The legacy doesn't drive me, honestly. It's interesting. Okay. It's not about what I can leave behind, and it is to now I have Ava, and I certainly want to leave the world a better place than before I arrived, if I can make that difference, But I just want to be able to look back, even on the last day of my last breath, because it's going to happen to us all, whether we like it or not, at some stage, and have a smile on my face, knowing, fuck yeah, I give it my best, and I live from the heart, and I gave from that place as well, and I created enough love, joy, happiness within my family. I used the world as a playground. I had an adventure, and I helped light up the light that was lit in me by other people following their passions, knowing that I've done that for other people as well. And I think right there is where, for me, that's all that matters. And if that's just one soul or 1 million or whatever that looks like, it's all right by me, as long as I knew I did my best and just can put my hand on my heart and go, that would be my, I guess, legacy, my offering, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I do have visions closer right now. Like, you know, I want to impact thousands of people's lives on a regular basis. You know, when you look at a lot of the people out there, they're doing it on scales of hundreds of thousands of people. And
yeah, but I think what you just said there before the thousands of people, I think that genuine desire is what then is coming from the heart. It like translates. It's like I've sat in the meditations that you facilitate and blown away. And it's not a thinking, it's not a doing, it's not a technique so much as it is what you just articulated there. Is to be able to do your best and to that desire to really share fully your light, your gift with the world or with whoever's there in that moment, and to pass that on. And I think that's something that changes the world. And then letting go of that egoic side of everything and all the goals and that's speaking from the heart to me. So yeah, I think that's beautiful, and I really appreciate you dropping into that and taking on my challenging questions. I was looking at the time. We're kind of whittling away this hour. I'll hand it over to you because I've kind of nudged and prodded you in different ways today. And is there anything else that you feel we haven't covered that you would like to leave the listeners with, just to wrap things up?
What's coming to heart right now, mind, heart, however you want to frame it,
Yeah,
is that the one thing that and this is where I do get frustrated sometimes, and that because things ain't moving quick enough, or we're not at that next retreat, or we're not at that, you know, and stuff, and then I bring myself back and go, whoa, calm down, guy, you got everything here, it's all perfectly meant to be. But I really feel, and I've had enough now experiences through this work to question reality, right? What is reality? You know, I've had enough scientists on here questioning, are we a bunch of photons of light compressed into a meat suit? and our brains are transmitter and consciousness is coming in. Or are we a meat suit that just then happens to have the lights on and off when we're alive and dead? And the brain is generating its thoughts, feelings, and consciousness is an internal job, right?
Yeah.
Now, I've had enough experiences personally on this journey to be 1000% convinced that it's the first one, that we're the photons of light stuffed in a meat suit, having this humanly experience.
Yeah.
And because I've had, and I believe, I get to the point now, I really believe I've had these experiences I think that is another part of the drive, but I think it's taken the whole podcast for me able to say that and allow it to come out as well. And what that gift has given me is given me the gift of insight and insight into who we really are. And I think if we really understood who we really are and really knew it in every single cell of our body, we would live with a lot less fear. We would live with a lot less of these. We wouldn't allow other people to govern and shape us to who they think they are. When a person tells you you can't do this or you can't do that or you haven't got that in you, they're just imposing their beliefs upon you. They're not your beliefs.
Yeah.
And for me, this work allows us to nurture something within us. So no matter what is going on in our external world, we have the capacity to choose. And we have the capacity of a choice to choose us. And if we can nurture that relationship between our head and heart, we can start to make choices that come from that heart and fully 100% trust in those choices and move forward from that place. And a lot of it will then, the fears that we live with that debilitate us and stop us from moving forward, consciously or unconsciously, all the things that have happened to in our lives that have led us to this moment start to break away. And we then come from that authentic place with each step forward each day. Now, our circumstances don't change, but we change. And as we change, our circumstances begin to change over time. That takes time. And then you're able to pan out slightly and have a bit of an overview perspective. Like, I always play the long game. I never really get caught up in too much of the glitz, the sparkly things in the now, and it serves me well long term. And so in all that, I would want to say to people, just think about that for a moment, ponder on that for a moment, and don't undervalue don't undervalue the gift of life. Don't take it for granted. Don't take the time that you have for granted, and make each day count to a degree. It doesn't mean you got to go up and do radical things and start skydiving and hot air ballooning and, or whatever it is, like a bucket list or anything. Yeah. But give yourself the gift of being present. Speak to the people that you see in this, in the coffee shop, and be aware of your actions and do things, and live from that place. And if you're willing to do that and take the road less traveled, then life will open up for you in so many amazing, beautiful ways. And I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to discover it, explore it, and then now start to pass it on to other people. So maybe that's what I would leave with.
Yeah.
I think.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great. Sums it up. Well, I feel like coming up to the curb here with this Ferrari that I've been driving around the block. I think I grinded a few gears there with you, mate. But it's been an honor to hold this space and to actually explore the man behind the podcast and really go a bit deeper, and hopefully some of the listeners can resonate with a bit more of who you are and what's driving this whole thing, because it's from my experience, you come from such a depth of heart and generosity and care that it's just an honor to be working with you. So thanks for all this and all that you are.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for holding space today. That was fantastic. And for anyone listening to this as well, if you've stumbled across this podcast, last week I had Petra on the show. The week before it was you, Matt.
Yeah.
And the trio that we've been doing with the work and that, I encourage everyone to explore the journeys. Will get a sense, I think, then of hopefully what we do and why we do it. So yeah, and thank you for everything, mate. It's a gift.
Yeah,
it really is.